From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. All right, on today's Riderflex episode, we have Denise Liebetrau on the phone from Prosper Consulting. How you doing, Denise?
I'm great. How are you doing this morning?
Aren't you impressed? I know how to pronounce your last name. And
I am impressed, but I always tell people I'll answer anything that's close. So yeah, but you did it perfectly. So it's
Great. I did a little homework on that ahead of time. I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you. I think this is going to be a great interview. And, you know, we give career advice and job interviewing tips and things like that on the Riderflex podcast. And with what you're doing as a consultant and, you know, all the advice you give around compensation and so forth, I think this will be a great topic. So I appreciate you sharing and giving back to the listeners, so to speak.
Yeah, no worries.
Before we get into the business, let's talk about Denise just for a minute. I want to know about Denise personally. Give me some background. Where she grew up, maybe some family stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in Kansas. I'm a farm girl from Kansas in a small town.
Okay, what town? I'll probably recognize it.
It's a little town called Marysville, Kansas.
Okay.
If you follow Highway 36 on the top part of Kansas, you will run into Marysville in the northeast side.
Is that population like what, 3,000, something like that?
Yeah, around that, yeah, less than 5,000. So yeah, not very big.
Okay.
High school graduating class was 60 people, so very small.
60 people. All right. Yep. People. That gives us an idea. Okay.
Yeah. So that's a frame context.
Yeah. What'd your folks do?
Farmed. Yeah, family farm that had been in the family for generations. I still have one of my brothers who farms with my dad, and
really
still in the family. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. What do they grow? Crops, or what do they do?
Grain. When I was growing up, they had hogs and cattle, and then grain. Back then it was wheat and soybeans and milo to feed the cattle, and now less so on the wheat, but more corn. And they still have cattle, but they got rid of the hogs many years ago. But yeah, they still farm.
Hogs weren't as profitable. Now I'm having a visual because I had not a huge farm, but in Oklahoma, I grew up for a few years out in the country, and we had farm animals. Now, did you ever have to bottle feed a calf before school?
No, it had to go clean out the feed bunks where we fed the cattle if it snowed. So when we got a snow day, I wasn't so thrilled, because then I knew I was outside in coveralls and a snow shovel cleaning the snow off the feed for the cattle. Before
the school bus, right? Before you got
the school bus, before we actually could go have fun on a snow day. Had chores and had a huge garden growing up, and in hindsight, it was a really idyllic way to live and really special. But when I was old enough to want to escape, I escaped and went to university at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas.
Why'd you pick Kansas State, by the way?
It was kind of the place to go.
Okay.
I knew my parents couldn't afford anything but in-state tuition, and it was kind of the place to go from my hometown.
Okay.
Most people went to K-State. You were kind of a little bit of an outcast if you went to KU in Lawrence. So,
oh, really? Okay. Is that how that works? All right.
That's how it worked. And at least that's how it worked. I do have one brother-in-law who graduated from KU, but and then studied journalism when I first started out because I loved to write, but quickly moved to business.
Why'd you switch?
I didn't like after I started taking some of the more specific courses, I didn't like it as much as I liked the marketing and some of the finance courses. And so ended up going to business school and getting my MBA.
Now, when you went to graduate school, did you know what you wanted to do at that point, or not really? You wanted to be in business, but you didn't have a specific goal, or walk us through that?
I specialized in marketing and HR.
Okay.
And, now I look back and I think, that was kind of foretelling in terms of where I'm at in my business today. I do HR work, and marketing is certainly a component of running your small business. But finished, graduated, went to Seattle because I wanted to get out of small town America.
Oh, did you target Seattle specifically, or you wanted to move to the West Coast?
Well, there was a guy that I was dating. There's always a story, right? There's the professional and the personal that blends. And so there was a guy I was dating, and he ended up becoming my husband.
Okay.
So went to Seattle, lived out there for a number of years.
Now hold
Really
on. Let me dig there just for a second.
sure.
Was he like, hey, come on, let's go to the West Coast. Let's go to Seattle. And or was that your idea, or together you were kind of like, I want to move to
You
yeah.
know, we had no, we had a really good relationship in terms of he was like, come to Seattle, but don't just come here for me. Because
All right.
if we don't last, I don't want you to be miserable and unhappy so far away from your family. So don't just do it because of me.
Had you been there? Had you guys gone to the West Coast before?
He had graduated a good year before me, and so I'd gone out to visit him a few times, and I
I
liked
got you.
it.
Okay.
And that was in the early '90s at this point, and
Hmm.
the economy was better out there than it was in Kansas. I was applying for jobs in Kansas and
Right.
Colorado and
Yep. Yep.
neighboring states as well, and ended up
Okay.
out in Seattle and
All right.
got my first job at the largest savings and loan organization, Washington Mutual Bank.
And what were you
Yeah,
doing?
compensation work
Right away. That's so that
right away.
you walked into compensation right away. Now, you didn't specifically target compensation. That just happened to be the job at the time.
Happened to be the job at the time, and I found out later that my boss didn't hire me because of my MBA and HR. She hired me because I knew a software system called WordStar. This was before WordPerfect, before Word. And she's like, I just didn't want to teach anybody the technology and the software, but I knew you were smart and you were resourceful and you were willing to learn. So I was like, I'm going to hire her because I think she's got
Well,
potential. And
how did you know that software? Did you use it in college?
yeah,
I see.
used
I
it in
see.
college.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So you get
But
that job. Yeah.
sometimes it's the smallest things that
I
gets you in the door.
totally agree. These little turns in life, left or right, you go through one little doorway and
Yep.
boom.
And it's often not the big decisions that you debate and you consider and so forth
Right.
that open the doors that you later realize were the big things, right?
Yeah.
And then ended up with a wonderful boss and mentor who taught me so much of the foundational things that I use today in my ability to consult with both employers and employees about compensation.
Okay.
And left that when I got tired of the rain and the clouds. I'll date
What?
myself.
Why is it every single time I talk to somebody from Seattle or that area or Portland, it always comes back to the rain
It's
every
the
time.
weather. It's depressing. I mean, it
Yeah.
is a beautiful area. Don't get me wrong. I'm really glad I got to hang out there in my 20s. But there was the grunge scene and
Yeah. Yeah.
Nirvana and the whole
Hmm.
it was a pretty cool scene as a 20-year-old. But got to the point where the weather was not where we wanted. That was not what we wanted. And my husband at that time was into fly fishing and had grown up in Montana. So we wanted mountains and
Okay.
wanted 300 plus days of sunshine a year.
Oh,
And so we
right.
went to the library and did research to find out where's 300 plus days of sunshine a year with mountains and fly fishing and a
You mean
great economy.
you couldn't just Google that in 1994?
No. And so we moved to Denver in
Uh,
'98, and the rest is history. I got a role in a consulting firm and then ended up in telecom, and my career
and
has
continued
been
on.
here.
So HR and compensation has been the thread the whole time, right? That's what.
HR, compensation, benefits, mostly a few small companies, but mostly Fortune 500 companies like First Data and Newmont Gold Corp and what is now CenturyLink. And
Okay.
loved it until I didn't. And then a couple of years ago, I had the benefit of getting my job eliminated. And so I had 6 months to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I started interviewing at larger companies like Lockheed and different ones. And it just didn't feel like it was
Mhm.
going to challenge and push me to grow the way I wanted to. And so I decided to start my own business.
Now let's take a pause right there. I think this is
Yeah,
key for the listeners. You know, I think a lot of professionals, it's super emotional
it
to
is.
either get laid off or whatever. Let's say the company closes or they downsize or whatever, and after a long career, they find themselves like, oh man, okay, I've never actually been out of work before,
Yeah,
and they
it's
go,
huge.
it's a super emotional time in their lives, and but what I think is important is if they get a severance, which I'm assuming you got, they gave you something, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, they
Uh,
did.
they give you a severance. Plus, you can file for unemployment if you
Yep.
need to. And I just always encourage people when I talk to them, I'm like, hey, listen, if you got a little severance and you got a little unemployment, I mean, you do have some cash coming in.
Yeah.
This is the bridge to do
Yeah.
something on your own if you want to. If you ever thought about starting a business or being a consultant on your own, here's the bridge money right here. It's right in front of you.
Yes.
So take advantage of it. So it sounds like that's so you were interviewing for another regular job, and then you're like, you know what? I'm gonna try my own thing. Let's talk about that. How did you come to that decision though? Was it over a month or two, or how'd that happen?
Having grown up on a farm in Kansas, I was surrounded by people who were self-employed.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
that was
Yep.
kind of in my family. And my brother is self-employed. Both brothers are. And then my sister works for another Fortune 500 company. But
Mm.
so I was surrounded by self-employed folks. And I always have in the back of my mind, but I was frankly afraid. It was fear that was
Oh, of
holding
course.
me back.
Yes. Yeah. Everybody. And by the way, everybody listening to this podcast, if it's happened to them, everybody's been afraid, right? If they say
Oh, yeah.
if they say they weren't, they're lying.
Exactly. And my situation is a little unique. I'm a widow. My husband died in
Oh,
2011.
okay.
And so I don't have a second income coming into my home. And so to make that leap with two
Oof.
kids, to not have any other way to pay for a mortgage and health
Ooh.
care and all that stuff it was scary, right?
How old were your kids?
When my husband died.
No, well, I guess that, and when you finished that last job.
So my husband died in 2011. So my kids were 3 and 7.
Ooh,
And when
that's tough. Ooh,
yep. And when
that's
I left
tough.
my
Oof.
job, it was in 2017. So,
So
so
they
6
were,
years later. So they were
yeah.
9 and yeah. And
Oh,
so,
wow. Hold on. Let me just, that's,
let that settle in.
let's just take a breath right there. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Nobody else, no partner's income, just
Nope.
yours.
Just me.
Two, at that point, teenagers or young adults kind of looking at you like, okay, mom, are you gonna,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And they're still to this day, they're like, can we really afford this, mom? And they're
Oof.
really sweet kids. They get, if money is like, it's a little bit of a roller coaster when you're an entrepreneur, but
Right. And and of course you're trying to be strong for them, right?
sure,
Emotionally, you're like in the morning in the mirror, you're like, okay,
I'm going to do it.
I gotta look at them like, because you got to give them the impression like it's going to be okay. Right.
And
And
it
then,
is gonna, yeah. And
yeah,
it's okay. The good news is I've always been good at networking, and I've got a
great.
really broad group of people, and I'm well
That's awesome.
known in the Denver market and beyond
Good.
for being good at what I do. So
So when you
I
hung
get,
your shingle, did you have a client right away?
pretty much what I did that was probably more unique than most, though, is I didn't just focus on one revenue stream.
Okay.
I focused on a couple. So one was obviously HR and compensation consulting to employers. But the second was because I had informally been coaching friends on their careers and how do you negotiate a pay raise, how do you get a promotion. I labeled myself a career and salary negotiation coach.
Okay.
And I put myself in some mastermind groups right away when I left corporate, because while I knew how big companies ran and I had an MBA, I didn't know how to get leads and make sales as a small business owner.
Okay. All right.
And so I put myself into some mastermind groups to get ramped up very quickly and ramp my learning curve so I could grow my business and get the sales leads and do my marketing and learn how to sell and how to develop proposals and
Now, can you walk the
all of
listeners
that.
through that? When some of the listeners, they're going to be like, okay, mastermind groups. I don't know what that means. Can you?
So
Yep.
yeah, and I don't know if you've ever done these, but the mastermind groups is where you find someone who has a methodology where they teach you how do you grow your business.
Okay.
And so I invested in one that was about how do you do high ticket selling.
Oh,
And how do you
you have to pay for this service.
Oh yes, you
Oh,
pay for this.
so now early on, you got cash going out.
I had cash going out, of course, and part of it was my severance, right?
Okay.
So invested in myself. I'm a firm believer in
All
investing
right.
in yourself. And
Good.
and they also had coaching along with it. I firmly believe in always
Oh.
having a coach and somebody to help you grow.
Okay.
And so had a community of other small business owners and entrepreneurs who were growing their businesses. So we learned from each other. We learned from the coaches. This program that I joined had people who had come out of Tony Robbins' organization as
Okay.
well. So there were mindset coaches,
All right.
Facebook gurus. So you learned how to do Facebook ads, how do you do webinars, all
Okay.
sorts of different skills. And so built a funnel, but then also started getting referrals. When people found out that I was running my own business, I had people start hiring me,
Good.
and start
Good.
hiring me as a coach, start giving me projects to work with businesses. And then I became a speaker because I always have an opinion on certain things. And so um, I speak to a lot of groups here in the Denver market and elsewhere, and so would get clients from the audience after people heard me speak.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome. So,
So,
so then you're off and running. Now, you started. By the way, why'd you call it Prosper Consulting? How'd you pick that name?
I kept a list of names. You know how you take notes in your phone.
Yeah.
I kept a list of names and went to the Colorado State website to find a business name, and went to GoDaddy to find a URL, and Prosper was the one that kind of resonated and that I could grab in those two locations. And so that's what I chose.
And by the way, it's prosperconsultingllc.com, correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure the listeners got that. I mean, of course, it'll pop up if they just do a search, but I
Yeah.
wanted to know what the URL was. And this business now has been in place for what, couple of years?
Yeah, it's been in place since 2017, so almost 3 years, and it continues to grow and be more and more successful. And one of the things I've learned is that what's unique about being a small business owner versus working for somebody else is you get to tailor what you deliver based on what you are hearing from your clients. And so you know this, if your
Yeah.
clients need something and you've got the talent and the resources to deliver that, you can modify things and continue to drive value and offerings that are aligned to what clients need.
Oh yeah, especially when you're as a consultant with a small startup. If a client calls you and says, "Hey, can you paint walls green?" and all you have is blue paint, you figure out how to go find some green paint.
You bet, exactly. And so a lot of it was just throwing things out there. And I do a lot of kind of marketing and testing of audiences through my speaking as well. So
Okay, good.
so anyway, so yeah, that has been how I find clients and how I've continued to grow my business.
And so give us like a 2-minute summary of Prosper Consulting. Like if you were given a 2-minute speech right now to somebody at a dinner party to pitch your business, go for it. Give it to us.
What would I say? I would say, hi, I'm Denise Liebetrau, and I am the founder of a company called Prosper Consulting. And as an executive consulting firm, we help business owners develop their business through their people, their processes, and performance metrics so that they can have more impact and increase their profit.
Okay.
I'm also a career and salary negotiation coach, and that means that I help career-driven professionals get paid what they're worth and have careers aligned to their values.
Great. Okay. So great. Thank you for that. Let me ask you this now. Are you getting paid to coach the HR director at a company on what to pay their people? Or are you getting paid by candidates hiring you to say, help me with my career and my compensation, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
All right. What's the majority of your business right now? Which one?
It flexes. Right now, I'm looking for more candidates and coaching clients. I've got a few people who are, what's unique about the end of the year is a lot of people are looking back at their performance for the last year. They're getting ready for the next year, setting goals, and it feels incredibly good to some people to look forward, and some people are like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I can't stand to come to work every day, right?
Right.
And so now is a great time. I get a lot of people who reach out to me and they're like, oh my gosh, I saw you speak at such and such. Can we talk? I've got some plans for the new year and I need your help.
Is that just compensation coaching, or what if they need help with their resume or their LinkedIn profile or whatever?
Yeah, I help them with that. I had one conversation with a woman the other day who's in a situation where her boss has left. She's been in the role for almost 3 years. Her job has changed. It sounds like she is deserving of a promotion. So we're going to work together on a PowerPoint presentation and a pitch to her leadership of her organization to try to get her a promotion and a pay raise, a job title change,
Okay.
and to hire some people underneath her. So kind of reorganize the department that she's in,
Uh-huh.
so they can get the work done better. And then she's also kind of in a situation after we get that done, she's like, I may continue to look for another job depending on how senior leadership reacts to this situation. So
Okay. All right. Very good. So,
yeah,
so you get business from individuals and from companies both.
I do.
Okay. On the compensation side, you know, how do you decide, right? When you're looking at a profile, what are you Googling? How do you decide, hey, I think you're worth 200 grand a year? How do you come about that? I mean, I guess that's kind
Yeah,
of your secret sauce of your business. So you can't
it
give
is.
all of it
Well,
away, but give us a taster on how you come up with that.
no, and I actually run workshops. I do workshops at Colorado Free University. I do
Great.
workshops at a lot of, and if you go to my website, prosperconsultingllc.com, you'll see the events and workshops where I teach and stuff.
Okay.
So people can find this out and get more detail. But, and I have a free gift I can offer your audience if they want a list of free resources of compensation data. I have a list of more than 14 resources they can get and
Awesome.
use.
Great.
So
That's great. Okay.
happy to share that with people. All you have to do is go to my website, send me an email, and I'll pass it on to you.
Great.
But I'll give you a tactical example. First, you figure out what is the job worth, right? So you do the research, and that's what this list will help you with. And then second, what are you worth within that range?
Okay. Got it.
And that is how, and I teach people how to tell the story of the value that they create by being an employee in the context of what the business defines as success. So if a business defines success as having more clients, driving more revenue, saving on expenses, more cash flow, higher market share, whatever those metrics are, I teach people how do you tell the story of what you're delivering in the context of that. So it's really easy for HR and business owners to say, yep, you're one of those employees I'm willing to spend more money.
Love it. Let me guess. Every candidate thinks they're worth more than they really are.
They are, and most people do think they're worth more money, but I'm honest with my clients. If I feel like they're paid very competitively, I'll tell them that. And it doesn't mean that you can't push for more, but sometimes that more is cash in terms of a bonus or a sign-on bonus, but sometimes it's also more paid time off or more flexibility in scheduling. There's, this, there's lots of different things you can negotiate when it comes to an offer. And even if you're an employee and you're somewhere where you like your job, you like your boss, and you just want a little more flexibility, having somebody like me, who's kind of an HR whisperer, whispering in your ear what to say and how to say it, can be really helpful. So I help people in that instance as well.
Do you find that today, especially with millennials and especially with people that live in Colorado, that work-life balance is almost more important than the base pay? Are you seeing that more and more?
Yeah, and I also, I struggle with naming generations and making assumptions about that. I find work-life balance important no matter what your age and generation you're in. I think all of us crave that as employers. I was reading this is always the time where trends for 2020 or, they looking backward, those articles are published. I was looking at something this morning. It's managers are always pushed to do more with less, the pace of change, the complexity. Organizations are flattening. Managers have more employees reporting to them than ever before. With all those pressures, I think it's really important to recognize that as leaders, you need to pay attention to what each employee needs and then kind of customize your approach, because you're not going to keep the great talent on your team if you don't also recognize that it goes way beyond cash in terms of making a work environment good to keep people.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Let me come back really quick to your service. I got to ask a question. Now, do you find that most people that would contact you are in between jobs, currently unemployed, or no, most of them are employed and they need help? What's that bucket of people that are contacting you? Which one is it? Go ahead.
It's both. I do a workshop at Lee Hecht Harrison every month, which is an organization that does outplacement services to people who've been laid off.
Okay.
So I purposely am in front of people who have been laid off, and so I'm in front of that audience. But I also do a lot of speaking like I did a speaking event for Women on the Rise. It's a new organization in Denver, and it was a lot of women who came out of the legal profession, and those women are employed. And so I'm in front of audiences like that as well. So I get a mix of both.
Okay. And now my next question is going to be, if I am unemployed, right, and I'm calling you, like, man, I don't have the money. Like money's super tight. Like, I don't know if I want to, like most coaches like you are super expensive. How do you address that with your candidates? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. I will tell you that instead of thinking of it as an expense, I try to help people understand it's an investment. So one of the
Good.
statistics I will often share people is that the Bureau of Labor Statistics says average tenure in jobs these days is 4.2 years.
That sounds
So
right.
if you think about that, every 3 to 5 years, you're going to be looking for a new job. So what I teach you isn't a one and done. It's
Ah,
something that you can
good.
use over and over again. The second thing is if you hire a great coach, regardless of what, aspect of your life you're hiring a great coach to help you with, you'll get better results faster. So if you think about, let's say I help you get a job a couple months faster than if you were doing a job search on your own. Isn't that worth
Mm.
my price, right? So I don't charge like enormous sums. I charge what I think is reasonable. I'm also at the stage in my life where I am doing this partially out of service. I want
Yeah.
to teach people what they need to know. And it especially hurts my heart when I see people leave money on the table as
Mm-hmm.
employees. And
Mm-hmm.
especially as a woman and a single woman who's got kids to raise, we need to speak up for ourselves. And a lot of women don't negotiate. I have frankly more men as clients than I do women, but I do a
Really?
lot of speaking in front of women's groups because they need more of a push to advocate for themselves often.
Gotcha. How about this? Do you want to talk about what separates you from the pack a little bit more too? Maybe emphasize a few things there. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, if you Google, coaches like yourself, you're going to pull up a ton of them.
Yeah,
Why Denise? Tell us why Denise?
why me? So one is because I've been in the HR ranks and I've been specifically in the rewards area, I understand that really well. And I've
Okay.
worked, if you look at my background, I've worked across a variety of industries, both
Mm-hmm.
small and large companies. And so I'm really good at helping people not only crunch the numbers and be able to articulate that, but I also know how to negotiate. And I'll give you an example. When I was growing up on a farm in Kansas, negotiation was part of life. You might trade hay bales for something else. You might go to an auction and negotiate. When I was in a corporate arena, I negotiated for benefits for one of the largest companies in the Denver market. And it was millions of dollars we were negotiating as it related to healthcare benefits and so forth with different vendors. So I've got a really strong background in negotiation that is pretty deep.
Okay, good.
And the other thing is, there are a lot of people who label themselves coaches and career coaches and
A
so forth.
ton, a ton.
A ton, right? Make sure, I always tell people, go interview other people. Don't just talk to me. I mean, go pick somebody you feel you resonate with, but pick somebody who's got the right background to help you with whatever your goal is. Be
Good.
clear on what your goal is and pick someone who can help you navigate whatever environment or people you're talking to who's got that right background. Just because somebody has a coaching certificate doesn't mean that they know how to make things happen, right? So make
Yeah.
sure you find somebody who is good at giving you practical, solid advice and asking you the right questions to help you navigate whatever you're trying to do in order to reach goals.
I appreciate you saying that. Nothing against certificates and
Yeah.
certifications, but I don't know. I've been around long enough to know that you can buy those. All you got to do is send a little check in, and somebody's going to give you some letters to put behind your
Yeah,
name.
and I'm one of these people that also, if you don't have a 4-year degree or a master's degree, that doesn't bother me. I lean much more toward what is somebody's experience and background and expertise
Yeah.
than I do on some of those formal things. Those things tell me you can learn something, which is
Mm.
fantastic. That's a certain signal to the marketplace. But
Mhm.
I much prefer to work with people who've got the right experience and are able to communicate the value that they can deliver with some coaching than somebody who's got, all of these accolades and things they can put on a resume that doesn't necessarily translate into something of value that an employer will like.
What do you like most about being an entrepreneur and a small business owner? What do you like most about it?
The flexibility. I get to choose the work that I get to do. I get to respond to my clients very quickly. I don't have somebody else's to-do list. But I will also say I had an entrepreneur before I launched this business who said, if you want to go on a personal growth journey, start your own business.
Mm. That's
because
good.
you'll find out
Yep.
the stories you tell yourself that don't help you. You know this because you run your business. You
Right.
will find out the stories and the limiting things that you believe or that you're not taking action on by running your own business. And I frankly was in the large corporations and I was bored and I had been doing the same thing for decades and I needed a new challenge and I wanted to grow and contribute in a different way. And this gave me that opportunity.
What are the scariest parts about it?
Um, if you don't dial in and ask for help, I think one of the things is you got to get really clear about what you're good at and what you need help with, right?
Okay. Okay.
So, what is your zone of genius as an entrepreneur? And then who do you ask for help with? So, I'll give you an example. I found you through my PR firm,
Right.
right? I have people who help me with marketing. I have a virtual assistant. I have a bookkeeper. I call it, when I was putting my online programs together, I hired a developer and a graphic designer. It's really recognizing that spending money as an expense, you have to think about, is this investment going to pay off, and really have more
Mhm.
of an ROI mentality. And some people have that and some people don't. I also have a level of persistence and grit that most people don't have.
Yeah,
So
grit is a key word for
it is,
entrepreneurs, right?
it is.
I mean, that's super important. A lot of people start being a consultant out of necessity.
Sure.
They're in between jobs or whatever. I mean, I see this. I mean, Riderflex is a recruiting firm, right? So we interview people all
Yep.
day long that are in between jobs that, on their LinkedIn profile, they got consultant,
Yeah.
which quite frankly, is a word for I'm in between jobs for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
And there are times I coach people to do that if
yep,
they need cash flow between
yep,
jobs. I get it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, right. Which they should, and I
Yeah.
encourage that. So I want to
Yeah.
make sure the listeners know I'm not encouraging that you don't do that. I think you should. But anyway, my point was going to be, I see people try it, right? They're like, I'm gonna be a consultant, and they get a gig, right? They get a client,
Yep. They
maybe
do.
one or two, and they're like, oh, this is great. I got
This
some,
is
I
awesome.
got, I got flexibility. I got cash flow. Life
Yeah.
is, life is good. And then boom, they lose that client.
Yeah.
All of a sudden that client calls and says, yeah, oof, we were cutting back. We're going to have to turn your fee off, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, all right. Now,
Yeah.
now I got to hustle and get another client. My point of this whole rant was going to be, I think, I haven't Googled this. I haven't done any research on it. This is my own assessment. I think people go into consulting, they get a gig or two, and they start feeling comfortable, and
Yes.
they're servicing those clients, and they forget to take time to sell and network to get the next client.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that's the key mistake I think a lot of people make, is they're so involved with tactically executing the current client, they're not selling for the next one, because it's
Yeah.
because it's hard to do both at the same time if you're by
It
yourself.
is. It is really hard. And I have to some days during the week I'm doing business development and trying to
Right.
get leads and working on that piece. And sometimes I'm working on client work. And
It-
yeah, you have to do a balance, and you can't let off the gas pedal too
right.
much on either side. You have to kind of compartmentalize. But yeah, I do think that's the challenge. And sometimes, especially if you've got a client very easily when you come out of the gate as a consultant,
Right.
you can think, okay, this is going to be easy,
Right.
and
Right.
then it's not, right?
And then
So
it's not. And
then it's
yeah,
not.
just to summarize that point, if like the biggest piece of advice we can give anybody listening to this episode is, always make sure there's a block of time in your day to spend on business development,
Yeah.
no matter what you're doing, no
Yeah.
matter what kind of gigs you got going on. If you forget to do business development a little bit every day, it will come back to bite you. You
Yes.
will eventually wake up and not have a gig.
Yes. And the other thing I would say for anybody thinking about being an entrepreneur, it is a really great time to be an entrepreneur,
Right.
because
Right.
you've got all sorts of technology that 5-10 years ago would have been thousands of dollars,
Right.
that you can
Right.
pay for just a few $100s a year.
That's a
And you've
great
got
point.
this technology, right? You can do a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. You can do calendaring. There's all sorts of
Yep.
tools and resources that are really not that expensive that can help you automate. And as a solopreneur like me, somebody who uses contractors to get work done for clients sometimes,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, you can become much more efficient and much more powerful than you could have just a few years ago for not that much money. So
Agreed. Yep. Agreed. So what's the plan for Prosper Consulting? Are you going to grow this thing and eventually have consultants working under you, or do you just want to keep it, small and just yourself? Like
Yeah.
what's the goal?
So I'll tell you one of the things, my goal for the next year is that I have got such a unique background as a woman who's been a leader in large organizations. My goal is to get on a board of directors for a public company.
Okay.
I've got a strong background and I've taken some training to become certified as a qualified board candidate to either be on a comp committee or an audit committee.
You don't happen to know Michelle Ashby?
That's the training I took.
I do know
Yep.
Michelle. Yeah. Matter of fact, we're going to try to have her on the podcast pretty quick.
Awesome. Yeah, she's fantastic. And she's training 1,000 women to get on boards. And a lot of boards are getting pushed to become more diversified. So I'd be a great candidate for that. So that's my goal this year. Because one, it aligns with what I started my business to do, is to help small and mid-sized businesses get better through their people, their processes, and their performance metrics, and how you design rewards to motivate the right results. Awesome. So I'm wanting to do that. And then secondarily to that, continue to grow my business as a coach. I'll be putting more programs online so that so I'm not trading one-on-one time. I'm serving more people through online programs where people can go through the programs and do some group coaching with me.
That's good. That's good. I like all that. That's good.
Yep. And then on the revenue side, as I help employers, I'm working with more employers to design HR and compensation programs that are simple and not overly complex, that'll help them reach their business goals. So yeah.
Okay. Now I have a challenge question for you. So you've only had this for about 24 months, which means your profile is still in that phase where recruiters are still going to try to grab you back for a W-2 job. You're probably still going to get some of those calls.
I get those calls almost weekly because I've got a unique background.
Yeah.
So, no, and I talk to them, but then I point them to other people in my network who would be good candidates because I like what I'm doing.
Everybody has a price, though. What happens if they offer you a crap ton of money? Then what are you going to do?
There has been only one firm that I have said to one of their consultants, I would come do some consulting work for them because I think they're doing some good work in the world. But at this point, I want to serve more than just one client, and I want to have more of an impact, and that's not just working for one client as an employee.
That's the other reason. That's the other reason consultants go back into regular jobs. Either A, they lose clients and they go back in at a need, or they get caught. They get bought. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have to be an extraordinary offer, an extraordinary organization that had really amazing leadership that I could make a difference in, and that would kind of serve what I view as my purpose on this earth. But I get calls a lot, and I listen, and most of the time it's not something that I would want to pursue. So.
One more question. Now, are you bound and determined to grow Prosper Consulting as a recognized brand, or would you partner with some other people that are on a life raft by themselves trying to grow a consulting business to create a larger consulting company?
I'd be open to discussions. I'm not solely focused on just my business. For me, it's about how are we impacting employers so they can reach their goals? How are we impacting employees so that they can feel, I have this, and it's in one of my blog posts. It's called a prosperity exchange. So again, I'm using that word prosper because it's far more than money, right? If you can create a prosperity exchange between employers and employees that benefits both, so both are reaching their goals in a way that is healthy and positive, I'm happy to consider opportunities in that space, whether it's me or me partnering with somebody else. And I do partner with other consultants sometimes if the projects are right. So yeah.
The reason I asked that question, is because I see so many people trying to do it by themselves because they want the flexibility, which I completely understand.
Yeah.
But they could partner with 2 or 3 other consultants and create a nice little firm and still have tons of flexibility.
Oh yeah. And I actually have a couple of former colleagues of mine who have that deep compensation expertise. And I think both of them, one is a consultant and her major client is going away at the end of this year. And I have somebody else who's leaving a job that's pretty toxic. And I told both of them, I've got work that I have to say no to sometimes. I would love to bring you into my firm as a contractor, and we could partner and continue to do some good things. So yeah, I'm always open. I'm flexible to what I can do to serve my purpose, which is to help employers and help employees. So
that's good. That leads me to my last couple of questions.
Sure.
If you had to define Denise's core purpose in life right now, what is that in a sentence?
My core purpose right now is to build a business that I don't want to take a vacation from.
I like that. That's a good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Well,
I
not that,
want to wake up in the morning and be excited and motivated and not
want to run away.
Yeah, and I lived too many years in toxic work environments or with people that, I slapped a smile on a face and pushed that door into the building and was like, okay, I can do this today. And I think life is too short, especially when I lost my husband. I learned very quickly that life is too short to be miserable. So live your life fully and be happy and choose those things that give you that kind of joy, because life is too short to do otherwise.
I know the listeners for the podcast, they hear that a lot, right? We all, especially as we get older, we all say that life is short and really don't stick with something you hate. And I know some of the listeners are like, okay, I've heard that a million times, but I can just tell you, if you're listening to this episode, at the age of 52, if you want some advice on that, you can call me. I'm telling you right now, if you're driving to work, hating your job, quit. Just quit. I mean, I'm telling you, life is too short. You're going to wake up in your mid-50s and go, what the hell did I do that for 10 years?
Exactly. And I always tell people, and you can go to my website, I will give away free strategy calls, 15 minutes to anybody who wants to set up a call with me.
Yes.
You can get 15 minutes with me and I'll talk. You obviously have to be practical and think about the money and how you're going to pay your bills and those kinds of things and what's enough for you. But we have far more control over our lives and what we sometimes give ourselves permission to do.
I totally agree. Yeah, you shouldn't be scared. Keep in mind the unemployment is super, super low. You're going to be able to find another job if you want to work. And so
yes.
don't be scared.
Yes. And I would say, whether you talk to me as a coach or other coaches, like, talk to people and find somebody to help you. Invest in yourself to get help so that you can speed up your process of getting that next job or getting out of your toxic environment, or just maybe having some conversations. I did a podcast yesterday about difficult conversations. How do you have difficult conversations in a way that leads to better outcomes? And so I have a methodology for that I teach clients and teach employers as well. So yeah, you have far more control than what you give yourself credit for.
Totally agree. Last question. At this point in your life now, when you look back, is there anything that you would tell that young lady coming out of Kansas State? Would you tell her anything? Tell her to do anything differently at the age of 21?
Oh, that's a good question. I would tell her, when she was in her trough of despair at certain points when her husband was sick, that it'll be okay. You'll get to the other side and it'll be okay. You'll be fine. And your kids will be fine.
You mentioned the word grit earlier. You definitely have that. I mean, you went through that, with your husband, and then you lost that job and you got 2 young kids at home, and you're just like, hey, I can do it. I'm going to charge forward. I love that. I love that, by the way. Congratulations on that, on everything you've done so far. A lot of people would have just crawled up and stuck their head in the sand and give up. And you just like, no, this is perfect opportunity.
Well, I had days where I did that. I mean, there is, you are seeing somebody who has evolved, who's had therapy, who's been on medication. I mean, like,
Yeah, but you fought through it. Yeah.
But I fought through to the other side. And when I was deeply in that trough of despair and really questioning, can I get through this? I wish I could whisper in that person's ear years ago to say, it will be okay. You will come out the other side and you will be fine. The kids will be fine. Financially, you'll be fine. Emotionally, you'll be fine. But in those moments, you can really, get to a bad place. And for anybody who's in that space, don't try to get through that on your own. Reach out to friends, to family, to therapists, to mental health professionals, and get the help. Because the most important thing I've learned is that it's not a weakness to ask for help. It is actually a strength. And don't try to do it on your own. If you're suffering, ask for help.
Love it. Denise, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast and sharing your story. I appreciate it. Super inspirational for the listeners and tons of great advice. So thank you. Thank you very much. Again, it's prosperconsultingllc.com.
It is. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit Riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.